Tonight on GamePoints 375, the final shape might not be delayed. We have the worst rated Call of Duty ever, it seems, and Sony seems to be dialing back on its live service ambition. All of that and more in just a moment. But first, I want everyone here to know this is an audience interactive podcast. So if you're watching live here at Twitch TV/GamePoints or later at YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, wherever you're watching, feel free to join in the conversation with any questions, comments, concerns, etc. I want to know what you guys think as well, so I'm not just out here in a echo chamber of my own. Just try to keep the comments on brand, on topic rather, germane to the conversations. I can talk, I assure you that I can. So, moving on to the very first story that we have here, we're going to go to a press release from Bungie itself. The link to this and all the stories we'll talk about will be provided down below or over on our Discord server. I recommend you go take a look at them yourselves. A unassuming press release, just mainly talking about Season of the Wish, launching November 28th. However, let's jump to the end down here because that was not really in question. What was in question is whether or not the final shape after Destiny's or Bungie's massive layoffs and just general disarray that they've been having going on, that would actually hit its February date. And, well, according to this, it seems to be so. Season of the Wish is the final season for Destiny 2 before the Final Shape expansion launches on February 27th, 2024, with all new episodes to follow. And the Final Shape Guardians faced off the Witness in an epic conclusion to the Light and Darkness saga. There was some doubt whether or not the Final Shape would actually hit that release date, given the fact that the rumor was it was delayed possibly until June or July. Especially with the chaos aforementioned at the Bungie studio, where just multiple people were unceremoniously booted off the campus, including long-term mainstays, people who've been working there since Myth. Michael Cefatori is the one that comes to mind, but he wasn't the only one that was old and there. Not everyone believes this. I think Jason Schreier himself said, yeah, we'll see about that, and many other pundits are also saying the same thing. The rumor is that many employees themselves already know that this has been delayed and that they're not saying anything just yet because they don't want to make it official, because pouring more bad news on top of bad news will make things look not so great to the heads at Sony. Keeping in mind that Bungie itself is not a publicly traded company, they can kind of, well, let's face it, lie to the people above them with no weird investor relations running afoul of that. And I know I'm not saying it right, but you know what I mean. However, that doesn't mean that Sony can't give the head of Destiny a chop later. I was of the mindset that this is going to get delayed. I know they're trying to put on a good face. They're saying, hey, Final Shape's still coming in February. God, please. I think they're going to miss it. I think they're going to miss it even if they decide to cut things to hit that target. The scuttlebutt was that the Final Shape was shaping up to be good, but not great. And this being the dramatic conclusion of everything Destiny 2 has been leading up to, that means this needs to be great, if not excellent. So good ain't going to cut it, especially given how poorly Lightfall was received and the massive PR hit the studio has just been taking over the past, let's face it, couple years at this point, it feels like. The Final Shape needs to knock it out of the park. If they try to force it to hit that February 28th date, or February 27th date, rather, I don't see that happening. I see it coming out in a rushed and mediocre state. Even if it is delayed, given the fact that they essentially fired people that have been working with them for decades, that talent drain is going to be felt for certain. I think Bungie, rather, is in bigger trouble than people are willing to admit. And the fact that they're trying to rush this, in my opinion, to come out on their original target date is a desperate sign that they just need a cash infusion. And it's also going to have a knock-on effect on some other Sony games as well, which we'll get into later in the story, and later in the show. Let me know what you guys think down below, though. Do you think the Final Shape's going to come out on February 27th? I personally think no way in hell. And I'm not alone in that. Like I said, Schreier and many other analysts are kind of assuming that this is also going to get delayed too, regardless of what Bungie is saying. Let me know down below. Moving on to the next story here, it seems that the most recent Call of Duty getting dropped has been, well, just lambasted critically, sitting on the lowest Metacritic score the series has had so far. And that might seemingly be attributed to the fact that it was just extremely rushed. You're seeing here an article from Bluebird, link provided down below. Speaking of Jason Schreier, written by him. The latest entry in the Activision Blizzard's popular Call of Duty video game series was made in half the time of the previous iterations, a fact that may be contributing to a spate of bad reviews about the game's storyline according to people familiar with the development process. Critics have panned the game, the first big release since Microsoft closed its $69 billion acquisition of Activision last month, saying the storyline feels rushed. That's a little bit unfair for Schreier to be throwing shade on Microsoft since they literally closed the deal a few weeks ago. They would have had no hand in developing this. So the kind of unwarranted shade at Microsoft there. Not saying Microsoft doesn't deserve shade, but in this case, not so much. However, far be it from Jason Schreier not to have a bone to pick with any company out there. Most Call of Duty games were developed around 3 years, but the bulk of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, which comes out on Friday, was made in less than a year and a half, said people who asked not to be identified because they weren't authorized to speak publicly. The abridged production schedule proved stressful for the development team, they said. Yeah, understandably so, considering that all signs seem to point to Modern Warfare 3 having supposed to have only a DLC expansion as opposed to a full-fledged game. That would also lead credence to the fact that it was only a 4-hour campaign, for God's sake. Moving on. Where were we? Here we go. The process was hurried because this year's game was conceived to fill in a gap in the release schedule following the delay of another Call of Duty title previously planned for 2023. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 was originally pitched to the staff at Foster City, California-based developer Sledgehammer Games as an expansion to last year's title, but it morphed into a full sequel during development, Bloomberg earlier reported. Once again, that 4-hour campaign being one of the signs that was the case. There was also some files that was hinting to this being an expansion as opposed to a full game. And also the rumor is that they wanted to work on Advanced Warfare 2. But Activision said, hell no, you're doing Modern Warfare 3. Well, you see what we got. An Activision spokesman denied that Modern Warfare 3 was originally an expansion and said that was conceived as, quote, a premium game from the start. But more than a dozen current and former Call of Duty developers said its conflicts with what they were told at the time. Some of the employees said the plan was left ambiguous during the first few months of development, while others say they were directly told it was an expansion. All said they were under the impression it was an expansion until much later in the process. Yeah, Activision is lying to you. This was meant to be an expansion. Multiple sources from multiple employees have spoken to multiple outlets saying Activision is lying to you. Oh, I'm sure they can justify it with some kind of corpo speak saying, well, Call of Duty 3 as we know it was just an expansion, but when we turned it into Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, then it was the first conceived as a premium game. You can use all kinds of legalese to get around the fact that they're lying to you, but they're fucking lying to you. It's one of those cases where they're factual but not truthful. It's obvious that was the case. And they're paying for it, it seems. Or maybe. We'll see as we get back to it. Going on. For the first few months of the project, which was codenamed Jupiter, the story was conceived as a smaller scale Modern Warfare spin-off set in Mexico that would be more achievable on a short timeline than the usual globe-trotting escapades of a full new campaign. But in the summer of last year, Activision executives rebooted that story and told the developers that they instead would be making a direct sequel to Modern Warfare 2 centered on the villain Vladimir Markov and featuring missions all across the world. So in a quick turnaround, this would have made sense for a DLC. You have one location, you don't need to design as many assets, everything can kind of be reused because it's all kind of in the same general area. You don't need to create like a desert map and a winter map and a Moscow map and a Paris map or anything like that. You can just use this localized area in Mexico. And that's not counting the fact that a small DLC campaign would have lower expectations than a full-fledged Modern Warfare 3. But here we are. 18 months? That first one makes sense. For 18 months, a full game? Hell no. Going on. The reboot ate into the schedule and forced developers to complete a new campaign roughly 16 months, the shortest development time for a new Call of Duty game in years. Yeah, this is a problem. Now, way back when Call of Duty first came out, you were able to create a relatively nice campaign in a relatively small amount of time because you didn't have the massive complexities that go into game design these days. 20 years ago, I want to say the first Call of Duty came out. Forgive me, I don't remember. I want to say it was like 2003 or something like that. Maybe 2003 to 2006, somewhere around there. Game design was nowhere near as complicated as it is now. You can churn out a great game in a year. That doesn't really exist anymore, especially when you're trying to create the spectacle that Call of Duty demands. But at the end of the day, Activision doesn't see Call of Duty for its single player campaigns, and to be blunt, neither do most players of Call of Duty. Most players of Call of Duty don't even touch the campaign. They'll go immediately into the multiplayer, be it Warzone or Zombies or what have you. The campaign's kind of an afterthought, which is a shame because that was always my favorite part of it, but far be it to me to argue with what people enjoy from the game. I haven't touched Call of Duty in at least 5 years at this point. Sales of the game do seem to be a bit softer than expected, however. We're going to go here to this tweet from Christopher Dring, who is I believe he is the head of Eurogamer? GameIndustry.biz, head of GameIndustry.biz, my apologies. And he says the following. UK physical data has Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3's launch sales at 25% lower than last year's Modern Warfare 2. 72% of sales were on the PS5, 20% on the Xbox, and 8% on the PS4. Obviously, digital data will change all this. So, at first glance, and this does count bundles, by the way, because it's just physical units moved, it seems that Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is selling way, way under expectations. However, something to keep note, this does not count digital sales. This is physical boxed copies only, including copies that have a physical code in them. So you get the empty box and there's a digital code in there. That also counts for like the bundles and everything as well. But as far as people going on and logging on to the PlayStation 5s or Xboxes to download the game directly on there, that is not in this number. And that has been increasing. That percentage of people who are buying it digital only has been increasing year over year over year. So it might match or maybe even slightly exceed last year's numbers. Either way, given the fact that Activision somewhat demands constant growth of this franchise every year, even meeting last year's numbers would be considered a failure. And that's not my opinion on it. That is just the nature of the beast. If your next game isn't bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, then eventually the franchise gets the axe. Not that Call of Duty is any danger of going away anytime soon. But I do feel like it is obvious that someone needs to step in and kind of right the ship when it comes to Call of Duty. There could also have been some extra incentive to cram this through due to the Microsoft acquisition. That is one thing that you might be able to point at, try and go, okay, I'll give you some points there because the Microsoft acquisition going through might have caused this weird accelerated development to get Modern Warfare 3 out. Because who knows what Microsoft is going to do with the franchise from this point on, because it's theirs. They now own it. And we'll see what they can do with it. With any luck, Microsoft decides to kind of put things on hold for a little bit. They might be eager to try to milk out as much money as fast as they can. But given that they took a PR hit from also the acquisition in general, it might behoove them to kind of spend a year or so just looking at what's on their plate and going, okay, what can we do with all this? Before making any major moves. Hopefully the next Call of Duties were given the appropriate time they need to cook and deliver something truly exquisite. It's just a damn shame to see something like Modern Warfare get bastardized and turned into this most recent trilogy of mediocrity, as it were. Moving on, speaking of kind of slowing down and taking a closer look at things, we go to IGN for this next story. Sony commits to the launch of just 6 PlayStation's 12 live service games by March 26. That is less than they were going to do. They were going to have all 12 up by then. They have backed off that number and said only 6 once again because of this realignment, this wanting to take a deeper look at what the quality of a live service game should be. Go to the article next to see exactly what it said. Sony president Hiroki Totoki has said the company is reviewing PlayStation's live service game push amid development trouble that has already seen Naughty Dog's Last of Us multiplayer game hit setbacks. Totoki said in a financial call that Sony is reviewing the 12 live service PlayStation games it has in the works and committed to launching only 6 of them by the end of financial year 2025, meaning the end of March 2026. Totoki said Sony is still working on the other 6 live service games will come out, adding, quote, It's not that we stick to certain titles, but that gamers' quality should be the most important. This is. I do think that Destiny has a lot to do with this. I think Bungie has a lot to do with this. Naughty Dog has been working on what has been kind of just called Last of Us Factions 2, which is the Last of Us multiplayer for many a year now. And they had Bungie come in and say, no, this isn't sticky enough. This isn't going to keep your attention. This is an issue. And then you had Bungie themselves missing their retention figures by like 40% or something like that, which would close most studios, but Bungie going to Bungie. So you had these live service experts, quote unquote, come in and say something's fucked up with this game, when their own game in turn is kind of a burning dumpster fire at the moment. Of course, Sony is going to slow their roll a little bit and go, okay, we need to take a real close look at what this is, because live service games, they aren't the easiest thing to develop. You have to put a lot of effort into getting one off the ground, because you already need to have multiple years of content lined up after launch to keep people coming back in over and over and over again. Furthermore, as I've alluded to for many months now, I personally, this is my personal opinion, think the live service market is oversaturated at this point. I've made the claim multiple times that while you can always charge more for a game, going up from 60 to 70 or even $80 a pop, while annoying is not too major of a problem. You can always skip that McDonald's meal. You can always find a few more bucks under the couch if you need to. Yes, I know that sometimes $20 is quite a bit, but if you want the game bad enough, you can make that $20 appear. You can't add a 25th hour to the day. You can't add an 8th day to the week. And live service games, more than your money, demand your time. They are custom designed to get your ass playing them every day. You have that they call them second jobs for a reason. They are meant to keep you from going on to another game and sticking with that one game and pumping money into it over and over and over again. You can save an extra $10. You can't make more time just magically appear. And I think we're seeing the collapse of the live service model already. When companies like when companies like Bungie are dramatically missing their targets for Destiny, when you have Epic having to lay people off because Fortnite isn't bringing in the money it used to anymore, yeah, we're at oversaturation at this point. So it makes sense for Sony to, if not outright cancel some of these 12 games, then at the very least maybe push many of them back a few years and see how the market changes at that point. I wouldn't be surprised to have these first 6 come out and then those other 6 just quietly disappear into the ether of some kind. Let's go back to the actual article itself. Sony announced plans in February 2022 to launch more than 10 live service games by March 2026. Letters saying the push would bring games of different genres to different audiences. It spent big on studio buyouts as part of the drive, bringing in Destiny developer Bungie, J.D. Raymond's Haven Studios, and Firewalk Studios. Sony worked with Bungie and has live service expertise with the Destiny series to assess its portfolio and reportedly scaled some live service projects back as a result. Once again, though, is Sony willing to listen to Bungie after the disaster that's been going on there? I don't know. I do think that Destiny's underwhelming performance and Bungie's general issues making PlayStation really evaluate these live service games it has plans. I'm going to mute myself for one. Excuse me. What else do we know about PlayStation's live service push? Well, Bungie's working on Marathon, a PvP-focused sci-fi extraction shooter. Maybe. I mean, that definitely has been pushed back to 2025. And Bungie very much needs that. I can see the future of Destiny dropping PvP in all but a token fashion as they try to get people over to Marathon itself. And Bungie desperately needs another IP that is not Destiny. Because when you put all of your eggs in one basket, and you're, once again, that 40% number looming in my head, there's a reason why there's chaos at Bungie. It's because they really have no other IP to rely on. Despite having a bunch of legacy stuff, they need to expand out. Haven Studios is working on Fair Games, a competitive heist game about robbing the ultra rich. Also, not doing too well for Sony right now, just based on general impressions. A lot of people looked at Fair Games and immediately associated it with an Ubisoft game, which makes sense because I believe its lead arts designer was poached from Ubisoft. And despite the fact that Jade Raymond gets many an accolade, the fact of the matter is she actually hasn't made a game in I think almost a decade. And by made, I mean like actually got one out the door. She's worked as like a producer on some stuff, but has always had either the project shut down or moved on to someone else before it launched. So I know that she is loved by a lot of the media in this industry, but it's really hard to point at something that she's done that is recent. So I think her name does not carry as much weight as media thinks it does. It's not meant to be an insult, just a reality of the situation. And Firework is working on Concord, another sci-fi PvP multiplayer game. This is that weird, like, late 70s, early 80s inspired trailer that we saw that seems somewhat comedic. No one knows really what the hell it is other than that Concord and is a sci-fi PvP multiplayer game. That's the extent of it that we know. That doesn't really bring anyone to the yard. There's also a Horizon multiplayer game from Guerrilla and a co-op action game from PlayStation's London studios. We'll see. This all seems, I don't know. I'm not seeing anything here that stand out or anything that anyone's really talking about. People were somewhat excited for Last of Us Factions 2, but then Bungie came in and just, well, said it wasn't good enough. So I can see why Sony is very reluctant to push any of these out anytime soon. Take a look at chat here. It's all about money at the end of the day. If game devs like Bungie can benefit from the investment and resources of PlayStation, it might result in high quality games. That I do agree that it's all about money, but the thing is that I don't think any one dev team is equipped to handle how big these live service games need to be anymore. And I don't think that they can juice any more out from their player base anymore. Live service, the idea of live service works great if there's only 2 or 3 of them. You dilute the marketplace too much because everyone's chasing live service games. Everyone wants to be GTA Online. Everyone wants to be Fortnite. And not even Fortnite's making as much money as it used to anymore. So, yeah, you're right. It is all about money. And I think that these companies are starting to realize that live service games are, like, putting all their eggs into that basket might be a mistake, especially since there seems to be a renaissance of the single-player game. When you've had, like, Baldur's Gate come out, Tears of the Kingdom, etc. Hell, even Dead Space did pretty well from what I understand. Not huge, but well enough. Back to the article. PlayStation Studios boss Herman Holtz admitted that in May, Sony faces fierce competition between live service games and time investment they take from players. He said, quote, "There's a risk that we talk about live service in generic terms, as if it's a single genre or even a single business model. PlayStation Studios are making a variety of games that can be referred to as live service, targeting different genres, different release schedules at different scales. We're also creating games for different audiences, and I take confidence from our track record in creating worlds and stories that PlayStation fans love. The priority for each studio can deliver their own project to make the best game they can." That's Herman Holtz trying to address what I was saying earlier about how there's only 24 hours in a day. Because he's like, yes, but player A isn't necessarily going to play what player B does because player A might like science fiction, player B might like sports, player C might like fantasy, etc. I think he is unwisely dismissing the fact that player A, player B, and player C are often all the same player D. Yes, not everyone plays everything. There are some people that play only Madden, or only play Call of Duty, or only play Fortnite. But the idea that there's this segment of population that's only going to play this one game, and there's a segment of population that is only going to play this game here, and we can capture on both, when in reality the overlap is probably about half the players of both those games would play each one of them. So you're still severely capping your player base because of the time investment required in it. I think he's overselling this, and I'm concerned for Sony's future if they chase the live service rabbit hole, because I think that way lies disaster at this point. But what do I know? These people are paid hundreds of millions of dollars to make these decisions because they do have a look at the industry that I don't. But just my gut, for what it's worth, says create a few live service games here and there, but this big push on 12 of them, that has disaster written all over it. Excuse me. Once again, heading back to chat here. Do game devs care if the longevity of a game after the customer buys it? Aside from any paid DLC the game might have, does the game dev care as much about the lore and experience of the game's players do? The developers might, the publishers don't. When it comes to a single player game, the vast majority of its money is made within like the first 2 weeks. After that, it's essentially dead as far as the bean counter is concerned, which is why there's this giant push for live service across the industry. Live service games continue generating income even after that initial burp. They get their first 2 weeks of initial sales, and then they get a little bit more when the first season pass comes out, second season pass, etc., and so on. Now, the developers, I'm sure, actually care about the lore and expansions, and they want to tell the world they crafted. This is one of those cases where we need to separate the development of a game from the publishing of a game. For example, Kingdom Come Deliverance sold 5 million copies and some DLC, but nothing the past few years near total signs from the devs. That's because they took that money and it started working somewhere else. I also think that Warhorse Studios is, with the guys that made Kingdom Come Deliverance, is self-published. I think they're technically an indie studio. Let me see if anyone owns them real quick before I move on to the next game. Warhorse Studios. Are they owned by anyone big? They are a subsidiary of PlayOn. Oh, PlayOn owns them. Interesting. Which means they're now part of Embracer Group. Because PlayOn was gobbled up by Culk. Culk in turn was gobbled up by Embracer. So yeah, they're part of their Embracer Group. Interesting. I did not know that. That does not speak. Given the fact that Embracer Group is going through massive layoffs, I would be concerned for people at Warhorse. Moving on. Despite my general cautioning of live service games, well, WB doesn't give one goddamn. Forbes, to this next article here from Paul Tassi. WB doesn't care if you hate Suicide Squad. It's doing more live services. It's rare to be able to spot video game disasters on the horizon so clearly, but the turn from Rocksteady, maker of famed Arkham series, to do a Suicide Squad based on co-op play, live service offerings, loot grinding, and microtransaction seems destined to go poorly, especially after recent gameplay showcases have ended with the game getting delayed until next year. I also think that there is a reason why people... I'm going to back off on that. I was about to say something I don't necessarily... I need to confirm if that's actually true or not, so never mind. But everyone's favorite media executive, WB Discovery's David Zaslav, does not seem to care and has announced that WB Games will go full speed ahead by turning its well-performing single-player IPs into live service, monetizable, engagement-focused projects. The vitriol coming out a little bit here in this article as well from Paul Tassi, but at least it's on topic. Zaziv ended up saying the following. Our focus is on... Let me blow that up a little bit bigger so you guys can read on. Or smaller. Our focus is on transforming our biggest franchises from largely console and PC based to 3 or 4 year release schedules and to include more always on gameplay through live services, multi-platform, and free-to-play extensions, with the goal of having more players spending more time on more platforms. Ultimately, we want to drive engagement and the monetization of longer cycles at higher levels. We have put specific capabilities. We have put specific capabilities. That's the start and end of a sentence. That means nothing. We are currently under scale and see significant opportunity to generate greater post-purchase revenue, microtransactions. This is that same mentality I'm talking about, and WB always seems to be a little bit behind everyone else. They're kind of like Ubisoft in that regard when it comes to being on the cutting edge. They're recently taking shit over their fatalities in Mortal Kombat and how much they're charging for those. So, of course, this is going to be something that Zaslav said. Now, WB does have some very impressive IP. They have access to the DC catalog. They have access to Mortal Kombat. Harry goddamn Potter. So while there is going to be a Harry Potter 2, the Hogwarts Legacy 2, there's no way with how well that sold them not making a second one to that. Fully expect the next one to be a lot more live servicing. What I would expect from that It's possible for them to it's that they would add some kind of Quidditch gameplay in there and make it multiplayer. That's what I think they would do with that. And let's not forget, they're still technically setting up the Lord of the Rings games as well. I'm telling you right now, I feel it down to my bones that the live service bubble is going to pop. And you have to put so much time and effort into making these games that they're going to be massive losses for the industry. I am of the opinion that we are on another 80s style video game crash on the verge of it. Some companies will survive it. I think Sony sees the writing on the wall and why they're delaying some things. I think that might be one of the reasons why Microsoft really hasn't pumped out a lot of its bigger games, because they're getting, a lot of them might have had a lot of live service focuses in there, and they're starting to see the writing on the wall, and they're trying to repivot to something else. I think places like Ubisoft and WB, however, are fucked hard. And they're going to be, the WB Games is already shopping for a buyer. Ubisoft is already shopping for a buyer. That's what the rumors are anyways. Goddamn. Scary time to be working in game dev. And I think that this short-sightedness of the live service is going to be the doom of many a company. It's hard to argue to investors who only see Grand Theft Auto Online, who see Fortnite, who see League of Legends, who see all these subscription-based models and go, we want that, make that. And you can't really argue with that because they own the company at the end of the day. But a good CEO would be able to kind of right the direction a little bit and tamper their expectations some. But once again, what the hell do I know? I'm just some guy talking into the ether. But yeah, this is a problem. Go back to chat here real quick. Surely these massive game devs own other income-generating assets to offset their losses from market downturns and keep them profit. No. Once again, take a look at Bungie. Bungie has one game and one game alone. Destiny. Destiny takes a hit. The entire company gets screwed. This is why Riot is trying to branch out into so many other different things. They keep trying to do things like, because they have, for the longest time, they've had one property, League of Legends. Well, how do we keep a drop in sales of that game from wiping out the entire company? We make other media. Arcane, the TV series, they did like a little role-playing game it's something King. I can't quite remember what it was called. They're trying to make other games set in the League of Legends universe, but at least not 100% reliant on only League of Legends to stay afloat. They have that battle chess, that auto chess game rather. They're at least trying to diversify, albeit under the same IP. Bungie, on the other hand, is just screwed. And I think it might be a little too late for Bungie. I'm not saying they're going to close, but they're going to undergo radical restructuring before Marathon hits. If they could have delayed it another year, if they could have delayed the collapse rather another year, so that way they can get Marathon under their feet, it would be a different story. But I think Bungie's looking at some very, very hard times. And that also goes to the fact that these games are just so hard to make now, because it requires your entire dev team for one thing. And especially on a live service game when people are just constantly hungry for content non-stop. It's a problem. It really is a problem. We have a couple of quick stories left here as we move on. Going to Eurogamer for this one. Konami is looking to employ game creators for large-scale Silent Hill projects. I don't like this. Konami is hiring for large-scale projects instead of Silent Hill franchise. The advertisements, which went out in social media, include a call for game creators interested in joining the Japanese publisher as producers, artists, planners, engineers, and product managers. The silent production team is recruiting artists, planners, engineers, and project managers, Konami explained in the recruitment drive as translated by Google Translate. While the call is particularly interesting given most of the Silent Hill projects we know about, Silent Hill Townfall, Silent Hill F, and Silent Hill 2 Remake are being developed by external studios. So you'd only be hiring for internal studios if you had even more Silent Hill games in development beyond those. Perhaps unsurprisingly, then, some fans are wondering if this correlates with the mysterious Silent Hill message, which is seemingly not as dead as some fans feared, or some other as yet unannounced mainline game, unlike the recent tradition, which is being developed internally. Konami is going to drive this franchise to the fucking ground again. I have no hope at all for Townfall or Silent Hill F, although Townfall might be interesting. Silent Hill 2 Remake is a coin flip. Bloober Team has made some excellent games. I loved Observer, but the fucking Medium sucked. And I get the feeling Silent Hill 2 would be more like the Medium than Observer. And there's that Silent Hill Ascension, which is the weird choose your own adventure that was just ruthlessly mocked when it came out on Halloween. That seems to be DOA. For a second, though, it seemed like Konami might be on the verge of a second renaissance, a rebirth of power, taking the stage alongside Capcom once again as one of the old stalwarts of the 80s video game industry. Back when they were making bangers like Metal Gear and Contra and all that good stuff. But it turns out Konami is still Konami. And I just don't trust any of these projects right now. I need to see them to believe that. And given how cagey they are about any information on it, really makes me concerned about the quality of what's coming up, especially after seeing Silent Hill Ascension and its horrendously stupid debut. Yes, Rocco. Konami quoted us saying, "We don't need Kojima from Konami." Yeah, 100%. Now, so okay, I'm going a little bit off the tangent here. Kojima is Metal Gear. Kojima is the only reason why Konami was even relevant there for those last few years before he left the company. However, Kojima is Kojima, and I get why, after many, many years of delays of Metal Gear Solid 5 and his seemingly obsessive need for control on that project, which understandable, but still, you're part of a company, why Konami and Kojima parted ways. I kind of get where the friction would have came from. Kojima is a man that you just kind of give money to and go. He is not a developer that you make to make a game that is going to sell a lot of money, if that makes sense. He is the video game equivalent of an Oscar bait movie, where you make this grand production and it costs a lot of money, and you know it's not necessarily going to make that money back in the theaters, but it's going to get a lot of buzz and prestige for your studio. That's what Kojima makes. He makes the prestige games that aren't necessarily going to hit a massive audience, that aren't going to be 20 million sellers. But what they're going to do is they're going to bring a certain bit of legitimacy and prestige and awards to your studio, which you can then use to try to get more investors in there. He's a loss leader, essentially. And I think that is where Konami and him ended up parting ways, because at the time they separated, Konami really just didn't care about video games anymore. They still don't, in my opinion. They're just looking for cheap ways to cash in. Konami makes its money from pachinko machines and, oddly enough, athletic clubs, gyms. It's weird, but that's where Konami gets a lot of its money from. The video game part of Konami is kind of an afterthought. They have this amazing stable of IP that just refuse to let go of. Although I'm certain that if someone like, say, Microsoft or Sony were to throw enough money at them, they'd probably part with a few of them. But they take those IPs and make them into, well, slot machines, for all intents. And when you have someone as what's the right word I want to use here for? When someone as Kojima, I would imagine he would be difficult to work with, given his need for control. I would imagine that he is a bit of a perfectionist. He strikes me kind of like as a James Cameron in that regard. And when your company is not really focused anymore on games, which is what he makes, you look at the budget and go, why are we wasting all this money? Get him out of here. So I get why that collapsed. But that said, when Kojima left, Konami as a gaming outlet stopped being that. They tried to recover a little bit with this big Silent Hill initiative, and like I was saying, it seemed like they might be on the verge of turning back into the Konami of old. But after what we saw with Ascension, and knowing that they have another 3 Silent Hill projects in development, with who knows how many more being developed internally, if this is to be believed what that is, it feels like they're just taking an IP that they know is beloved and milking the hell out of it. Hey there, Soul Glove. Good to have you as we get close to wrapping things up here. That's the final story for the day. However, I don't want to say it's the final. It's the final story that's not part of this big collection of layoff news that I have. I know that there's not a week that goes by without layoffs, and we have a whole bunch of them happening. First of all, we go to Video Game Chronicle here with not quite a layoff yet. I'll explain what I mean in a moment. Embracer's Time Splitter Studio Free Radical faces closure. For the past 6 months, let's start here. According to where the hell was I going? There it is. There it is. Sorry, my apologies. Lost my place. According to people close to Free Radical Design, the Nottingham, UK-based studio has been part of the evaluation, and employees have now been notified that it could close. As required by UK law, Paleon, PlayEon, the Embracer division, which runs Free Radical, and Warhorse Studios, which we were talking about earlier, must consult employees for a minimum of 30 days before making any redundancies, including exploring ways of avoiding them. There remains a possibility that the studio could remain open then, should the Embracer receive interest from third parties interested in acquiring it. However, VGC analysis of LinkedIn and social media shows that within the last 24 hours, at least 15 people employed at Free Radical have already published posts saying they're looking for work. That includes the lead game designer, senior artist, senior technical artist, game designer, and the studio's IT manager. Neither Free Radical, nor PlayOn, nor Embracer responded to requests for comment in the time to be included in this story. Embracer's next earnings release is due next week, sometime this week, as of the publishing of that story. Free Radical's gone. If not gone, then immensely gutted. The only thing that's kept them from doing it right now is, UK law that says, hey, if you're going to have redundancy firings, you're going to have layoffs, you kind of got to give your employees 30 days notice so they can get their shit together. You don't do that knowing that people are immediately going to start leaving if they can. This studio is done. So if you're looking forward to that Time Splitters reboot, it's out. I promise you it's cut off. And unfortunately, that is not the only bit of layoffs as we go through a very quick lightning round here. Amazon cuts its games unit jobs in a broader restructuring. About 180 jobs lost there. Warframe Studio confirms a number of layoffs as it shuts down its publishing arm from Eurogamer here. Digital Extreme is essentially cutting a number of layoffs. We have no idea how many people are getting lost, but it's also going to be shutting down its free-to-play online action RPG Wayfinder following the closure, and that full control of that probably returned to Airship Syndicate through the developers of the game. Unity is announcing layoffs. They're going to be letting go of an unknown number of employees as a comprehensive assessment of its project portfolio at the beginning of its fourth quarter detailed in its Q3 2023 report. Essentially, they just had their financial quarter results. They're getting rid of more people. The assessment will likely lead us to decide to discontinue certain offerings and reduce our workforce and reduce our office footprint. Layoffs, essentially. And then, of course, Humble Bundle is getting laid off, or Humble Games, rather, suffering layoffs. This according to a post by LinkedIn by a former staff member at Humble Games, which seems to corroborate the anonymous tip that Good Luck Have Fun received earlier. Layoffs at Humble happened on Monday. Almost every week this year, I have reported on layoffs on the industry, and I just had 4 stories about them back to back to back to back. I'm sorry, 5. 4 layoffs, 1 upcoming. There's nothing more I can say on the topic other than please, if you're a developer, Hell, I shouldn't even limit it to developer because it's not just game industry that's going through massive layoffs. Everyone is. Try to cut where you can. Try to save a little bit of money. Get your resumes in order. Have your backup plans ready to go. Try to save some money because the axe is going around and it is not stopping. I know that a lot of people are telling, at least in America, are saying, "Oh yeah, inflation balanced out. We came under CPI this year or this month, month." No, I didn't increase rate of inflation. Inflation's still shooting up. Companies are still being pinched. I am of the mindset that this is going to be a very lean Christmas for a lot of people, which means the companies are going to come in massively short. And considering that many places don't even go into the black, aren't even profitable until this quarter, it's going to get real bad. What you're seeing right now is simply the first wave of layoffs of what I feel like are going to be many, many more coming over the next year. This is not financial advice. Once again, I'm just some dude talking behind a microphone to people out there. But it is going to get worse, in my opinion. Please, please be ready for it. And with that bit of downer, turn to chat one final time. What is causing this marauding acts of game development? Says Bay Snooker. Soul Glove response, possibly overhiring during COVID. It's just the economy in general is fried. You can't. COVID definitely, the quarantining definitely slammed a lot of things shut for sure. And especially when it comes to the video game industry in particular, when you had people locked in their homes during 2020. You had video game numbers spike really high because people had nothing to do, so they're just at home playing. So then you come to 2023, people are going back outside, people are not playing video games as much, so the sales figures have decreased. Well, when you have a decrease in sales, you must have, by necessity for a corporation, a reduction in workforce. However, there is also a far more insidious problem, and that is with inflation. Inflation that was caused in part by COVID and the lockdowns, because they started printing money across the globe. Not This isn't just an American issue, but it's a lot of America. They started printing out money like mad, devaluing how much the dollar is. That's why prices have shot up across the. Shit just got too expensive. When the price of meat, eggs, and dairy have like doubled, don't take that number specifically. I'm just throwing out a number there, but it's all gone up. You suddenly don't have time for games anymore. When you suddenly have to pick up a second or third job to make ends meet, you don't have time for those live service games anymore. Games get cut. And games have jumped up in price recently too. They went from 60 to 70 not all that long ago. And they keep nickel and diming you for battle passes, season passes, loot boxes, microtransactions, expansions, skins, fake digital money to buy the extra special character, fatalities in Mortal Kombat. Cuts start getting made. Revenue decreases. More people get fired. Game production slows. Things get delayed. Less income gets in. More people get fired. And the spiral starts going out of control. Do I enjoy being the bearer of bad news? Not really, Rocco, but there is a bit of me that does take a little bit of shouting for it in the fact that I was telling people this a year and a half ago, that this was going to be a result of what's coming up. You can see me ranting about this as early as 2020, that hey, it's going to be real bad in the next couple of years. So there is a slight bit of I told you so, I will admit, but that does not mean I take pleasure in seeing just the axe getting swung around. So maybe this was avoidable, in my opinion, and I think a couple studios have been avoiding it. I'm not going to go into details about that now because I actually need to do some research on it because I didn't have those names listed in my head. I think that Nintendo's probably one of them. I shouldn't say studio, publisher in that case. I think Nintendo is definitely one of them. I don't think I've heard of any reports of them having layoffs anytime soon. And I think a lot of that goes to the fact that they just keep a massive chest full of liquidity on hand. But for the most part, yeah, there's a lot of people screwed right now, and it is going to get. And I hate closing every show with that, but it is what it is. And with that, that is GamePoints episode 375. Thank you all for showing up. I stream this show every Tuesday around 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time right here at Twitch TV/GamePoints. So come on by, join the conversation like many of you do. If you can't, however, catch all the episodes over on Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, etc. Regardless of where you're watching at, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe. It's, you know, the rigmarole. You guys have been on the internet long enough. You can follow me on X at CapitalistPig21, or you can join our Discord group, link provided down there below if you want to be part of the greater GamePoints community. I also stream throughout the week as well, so come on by and take a look at whatever I'm playing. We got the new Stellaris expansion coming out sometime later this week. Very excited to get a hold of that. Thank you all for showing up, and until next time, I'm out of here.